Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. What do you do when you have a government in Westminster that admits its own welfare reforms are, and I quote, flawed, but pushes on with them anyway? What do you do if you don't come from a privileged family background that can bail you out whenever you need it? You get total chaos in devastating doses, wrecking the lives of people who are easy targets. It's not universal and it's not credit. And the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, who have just got back to me, have said that they want to see an immediate end to waiting days, fortnightly payments and rent directly to landlords, just like the Scottish flexibilities coming into force tomorrow, and more generous work allowance and a second earner allowance. This is needed if universal credit is to make work pay, as the Tories say, and better than minor changes to any taper. They also say, the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, that we support choice over payment splitting within households, stating that those receiving the child element should be first. And Lord Freud, Presiding Officer, the architect of universal credit, has already admitted that there are faults, and he has said that it might take decades, and I quote, decades to optimise the scheme. That won't be a problem. But then this is the same Lord Freud, in a letter to me, who told MND sufferers to take in a lodger or work extra hours in order to cope with the bedroom tax. So you get a view of the man behind the scheme. Then we have David Gauck declaring that universal credit is transforming lives. Well, yes, Presiding Officer, it is transforming lives, but not for the better. Certainly not for the people that I see suffering coming through my door every single day. And the figures emerging from that transforming lives is in the 5 areas where we've had the pilots. The CAB has told us that a 15% rise in rent arrears is seen. An 87% increase in crisis grants are needed, and 2 of the 5 CAB areas, 40% and 70% increase in food bank advice. And when Angela Constance wrote to express the Scottish concerns, she didn't even get a reply. What she got was a 5-page eulogy declaring how wonderful the whole system is, a bit like the letter I got from Lord Freud. It's yet another depressing example of the Conservative attitude to people who are in any kind of need. That Oliver Twist attitude that we've heard of today. You want more, you won't get more from the Tories. We have already seen them attacked with the bedroom tax. We've been making those on DLA face humiliating interviews. We've seen a loss and cuts in payments and demands that they are fit to return to work. Presiding Officer, in Hamilton, Larkhall and Stonehouse, I have a constituent who is unable to leave his home and is relying on a multiplicity of drugs. He has been told to go and stack supermarket shelves. He can't even leave his wheelchair unaided. Another example of the conscious cruelty of this Tory UK government. People are told that universal credit only affects means-tested benefits. Even that much isn't true. In complex cases, for example, where there is an enhanced care component for a disabled child, the families are set to lose thousands of pounds a year. And if you have a second disabled child, that will double. And Citizen Advice Scotland have also told us in their analysis of 52,000 cases that they calculate that those on universal credit would have less than £4 per month to spend after paying their bills. £4 a month. People in here spend more of that on a smoothie. The organisation also found that the system has been rolled out in Scotland. There has been an 87% increase in crisis grants, as I said earlier. 87% increase in crisis grants. That's local authorities picking up the pieces of people's lives on a benefit that's been cut by Westminster. That's not acceptable. Since the Scottish Government introduced this scheme to provide some mitigation, it has paid out £132.6 million. That's just a sticking plaster. That won't solve the problem, but that's £132.6 million not spent on frontline services. And universal credit, as we've heard, has brought with it rent arrears that have rocketed, making eviction a constant threat. In East Lothian, we've heard some of the horror stories from there. In South Lanarkshire, Presiding Officer, where universal credit will roll out this week, the council have had to put by £4 million just to deal with the rent arrears. £4 million, in addition to the £132.6 million not being spent on frontline services. As politicians, as representatives of our communities, we cannot stand on the sidelines silent. Presiding Officer, I welcome that the Scottish Government has managed to secure a system that allows some flexibility to make more frequent payments, but we are having to pay for that. Something that has been welcomed by charities and voluntary organisations. Hopefully, that will help contain some rent arrears and make very limited incomes a bit easier to manage. But that is also a stick and plaster, not a cure. Amongst the multiple design flaws that this Scottish Government has managed to fix, only 2 of them. This is a turnaround in time for applications. We need to fix that turnaround. I have people waiting 6 weeks. Yes, we do. We have people waiting 6 weeks. However, the brilliant volunteers at the Hamilton District Food Bank in my constituency are telling me that people are waiting up to 12 weeks long. They have seen young men who have been subject to this in South Lanarkshire for 12 months, who are rough sleeping, who are sofa surfing, who are unemployed, who are self-harming and in some cases attempting and being pretty successful at suicide. That is not something that I will remain silent on. Food banks where the system has already been rolled out are seeing a double in the number that they've seen previously, and it doesn't take a genius to work out where that's going to lead us with 50 more rollouts. Yet this government is determined to ignore that evidence. I say to Theresa May and David Gauke, admit it and accept the figures. You've got it wrong and it's going to get much, much worse. Accept reality and stop the rollout towards oblivion. You need to rethink and put people at the centre of your plans instead of putting them on the streets.
Pauline McNeill, followed by George Adams.